Hello, and thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Book Talk. My name is Tyler. We're going to be going over two books today. One is 1776, The American Revolution, and the second one is called Guardians of the Clocks, Guardians of the Cosmic Clock, The Emerald Tablets. It's book one in a science fiction series. It's for children, and it's an award-winning book, very well crafted, very well written. I had this book sent to me from Jabril Yousef Faraj, and here's what it looks like. Very good book. I do suggest it. The protagonist's name is Zia Nicole Jenkins, and her best friend Elijah find basically a door out in the middle of the woods, and they get kind of thrown into a centuries-old conflict. And in it is pharaohs, zombies, shapeshifters, fearsome lizard king, and everything that your child probably wants to learn or read. And it's not very much of a chunker. It's kind of small because, again, it's made for children. And it does have a disclaimer on the back. I do appreciate disclaimers with kids' books because, again, you definitely want to know what your kid's reading. And the disclaimer is right at the bottom there. I'll read it to you. The plot places our protagonist in uncertain situations with selfish, creepy, and power-hungry enemies, causing them to act decisively, demonstrating that any obstacle can be surmounted with patience, teamwork, and imagination. The narrative addresses themes of liberation, self-confidence, and bodily autonomy, while taking on difficult topics such as parental abandonment, bullying, family trauma, slavery, and death in ways young adults can understand and relate to. And when I was reading the book, I definitely found that to be the case in this book. It does have examples of how to deal with bodily autonomy. It does have examples of how to deal with bullying. It definitely comes across that the author is showing children better ways to deal with these things. And it's very well done, very understandable. And when my daughters, they're currently 5 years old and 3 years old. So right now they're not reading books really. They do love audiobooks. In fact, my daughter is in her room right now listening to audiobooks. Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief is what she's listening to right now. She loves them. And I'm hoping that she picks up the reading knack kind of like I did. And if she does, I'm going to put this one aside and keep it in a safe space so that it's ready for her when she gets old enough. Now, the second book we're going to be talking about is called 1776. I have done 2 other videos on it because although it's not a big book, it's only something like 200 and something pages, but there is so much information crammed into those pages that it did take more than 2 videos to go over. And in my last video, I was talking about some of the battles that took place, and that the British, their main issue was that when they were sending information overseas, they had to wait months, and that was causing them a lot of issues. Because obviously the Americans didn't have to wait months for their orders because they're currently right there on the continent. So the British had that issue to hurdle over, and they did. They gave more power to their generals, and then the British started to whoop butt, and massively too. By the Battle of Kips Bay, the Americans were so demoralized that 100 British soldiers attacked 3,000 American soldiers and won. Not only did they win, but the second that the Americans saw the British were coming out of the boat, the Americans just fled. 3,000 Americans fled from 100 British soldiers. And it was funny because it explained that General George Washington was out on the floor out in the field with them and watching them all just scatter like scared mice. And he was looking around saying, are these the men that I'm expected to defend the American continent with? And it explained that George Washington was so mad that the generals even had to stop him from shooting his own men. He was that mad. And it explained that when the Americans had fled, the 100 British soldiers, not only did they flee, but they felt lucky enough after they had fled to feel lucky to even be alive. It made me drop my jaw. I was very shocked. And then they kept winning battle after battle after battle. Got to a point where at the end of 1776, the British actually let their generals ship on home for Christmas. The generals, like General Howe, they went home. They just abandoned the field. They just figured, oh, we got this. We stomped them. Like this war is pretty much over. They were even writing home and saying, we'll be home for Christmas. This war might not even last till then. And it did. It lasted. Obviously, because the war didn't end until 1783, where the British surrendered in Yorktown. But in 1776, the British kind of thought they had it. So the British generals and some of the soldiers just shipped on back down to England, leaving a skeleton crew back in the American continent. And General George Washington decided, not knowing that the generals and the soldiers actually shipped home for Christmas, that this is the best time to make a surprise attack. He expected approximately between 10 and 20,000 soldiers to be waiting for him when he crossed the Dakota. And basically what happened is he only had about 3,000 waiting for him. So he had him and two other generals were going to attack from 3 different sides. But they had to cross the Dakota. And when General George Washington crossed it, he found out that the other 2 generals could not make their way across. So out of 3 brigades, only 1 made it. So he only had 1/3 of the fighting force that he originally decided to take over. And he was kind of hemming and hawing and thinking, do we go back over and retreat, or do we actually attack? And he decided to attack because he decided, if I retreat, the British are just going to take pot shots at us. I'm going to lose some soldiers anyway. So he said, decided if I'm going to lose soldiers, it might as well be fighting the actual enemy. So he attacked, and at this point in winter, it was common for the British to cease all war efforts in wintertime because of the trials and the difficulties that winter brings. And they kind of expected America to honor that. So the British didn't expect the Americans to attack. So when they attacked, they were very unorganized. And the Americans ended up, the only casualty they had was 1 man that froze to death on the way to attack the British. In the actual fight, the Americans didn't have any casualties, but they killed a lot of British, and that turned the tide of the war. Before that battle, reading this book, I kind of figured when I finished the book, I'm like, am I going to finish this book and find out that America didn't win the American Revolution, that the British won it? Like, it was starting to look like that. And in the book, like, if you didn't know any better, you would have swore that the British won. But General Washington crossing the Dakota, it turned the tides. And then after that, the Americans, because they killed the British without even having a casualty, they thought, we can actually do this. The British aren't big and scary as we originally assumed they were. And then soldiers started coming in and joining up. And their military got bigger, got stronger. They found out that if we actually plan our attacks out, that we can actually beat the British. And then, as you know, in 1783, the British surrendered in Yorktown, and the Americans won the Civil War. But this book is more about the year 1776 rather than the entire Civil War, because that year was the most important one. That was the year where America had to not only declare independence, but actually create a military and build a military and a navy to fight the British off, all in the same year. And it goes through the challenges that the Americans actually faced. I do suggest that book. It's an excellent read, jam-packed with information, which is why it took 3 videos. If you watch 3 videos, I do thank you very much. Subscribe, like, comment. I will respond to every single comment. And thank you very much for watching another episode of Book Talk. And I'll see you on the next one.